Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious. I'm Pete McConville. If you watch my channel at all, you'll know I'm kind of all about the transparency. That's really big for me. I did a whole video on how I'm not really entirely comfortable with brands like AV8 and Thomas Earnhardt and Spinnaker, who have in the past at least kind of hidden who they are and where they fit in the watch community, pretending to be micro brands when in fact they're a front for a large white label parts supplier out of Hong Kong. And I'm not really been that comfortable with, if you like, that lack of transparency. That's not uncommon. There's quite a few other YouTubers, and there's certainly a lot of my commenters are also all about that kind of transparency. And a lot of that really starts to hone in on the concept of movements. And to give it a really simple thing, there's a lot of YouTubers and a lot of commenters who are really uncomfortable. And I'll go further. They really dislike, they actively campaign against watchmakers coming up with like new movement numbers. So you might have an SW200, but by the time it hits an Alpina or a Frederic Constant, it becomes an AL525. You might have something that was once a 2824 and it becomes a Breitling B17. And a lot of people are really uncomfortable. They don't want that to happen. And these aren't just like freaks and kooks. They're commenters that I engage with a lot, who I've got a lot of time for. It's other YouTubers like Bill from Watch Art Sci. He's really big on this and has done any number of videos where he talks about the Weasel words that watchmakers use to get around having to say that they're using a Solita or an Solita or ETA movement. I can't bring myself to get too worked up over the fact that, as I said, an ETA 2824 becomes a Breitling B17. A Solita SW200 becomes a Frederic Constant AL525. It just doesn't bother me. And that bothered me. That it didn't bother me kind of bothered me. What is going on here? And the point is, a lot of these brands, Breitling, Alpina, Frederic Constant, Bell & Ross, these are brands I like. These are brands I collect. So is this me simply rationalizing something out because it kind of suits me and it suits the brands I collect? That's quite possible, and I'm going to give you my reasons after having spent about 2 weeks thinking about why don't I care. I'm going to give you my reasons. I stand by them. However, it is still clearly open to you to assume that I'm simply rationalizing and making choices because it suits me and the brands I kind of collect. That's entirely up to you. I can't do anything about that, and if I was in your position, I'm not sure if I'd do anything different. Now, the first thing in trying to think really hard about why don't I care about the renumbering of a part number is because the more I look at it, the more I just don't care about in-house movements. I'll throw a challenge out to you. Do you know where the case of your watch came from? Okay, so Rolex people, you can all put your hands down. You do know this. But do you know where the case came from, where the hands came from, where the glass came from, where the crystal came from, where the band came from? As I said, unless you're a Rolex person, there's a huge probability that one or more of those components came from another supplier. And yet, no one cares. No one gives a fat rat's clacker where any of those other parts come from. For some reason, it's all about the movement. Funnily enough, not only do I not so much care about the movement, but the more I probed at this, I had this really interesting thing. The more I became fascinated about case design. So it's just like this really interesting thing of I can't get that excited about movements at all. I can't get that excited about in-house movements at all, and so it probably comes as no surprise. I don't particularly care about the part numbering of movements. Secondly, and I know this, I both know this about myself, but I also know that what I'm about to say is incredibly unique to me. I've been working in aviation for the best part of 30 years, and in my field, it is absolutely normal. In fact, it's expected. There would be something wrong if a part if a manufacturer that brought parts in, did some more testing, and then fitted them to their airplane, did not give that part a new part number. It is absolutely the thing that is done. If I buy 100 parts in, 100 valves, and then I put them through another testing regime where I might, for example, change the specs. I might get a valve that comes in and it's plus or minus 5 psi, but by the time I've tested it, thrown away 20% of them, and then put out the other 80% that might be now plus or minus 2 psi, those valves will have a new part number. That is how aviation works. So that's the environment I've grown up in for the last 30 years. So if I look at a movement and I see that the balance, if I see that, for example, the counterweight for the automatic movement has been changed out, for me, that part, the movement, must have a new part number. To see Zin, for example, with their 556, on their website, they say that's got an ETA movement, but the movement they show you is clearly changed. That offends me. I don't like that. It is not an ETA movement anymore. Zin, you've changed it. So don't say it is. And I realize that puts me in exactly the opposite position that most of you are in. Most of you will go, it's just a counterweight. Who cares? But I look at it going, but it's not the ETA part. To give it an ETA number, to pretend that it is now a Solita movement, is wrong and shouldn't be done. So again, I acknowledge I'm kind of different to a lot of you, but yeah, it means when someone gets upset about the fact that a B17 movement, which has new balance springs, new mainsprings, new balance wheel, new regulating hardware, new shock protection hardware, which has been recalibrated and regulated to now be chronometer standard, that it is a different number to the ETA that came in is just, well, obvious. Of course it is. How can it have the same number? And yet, for a lot of people out there, they're very upset by that. The last point I'd make is that, again, maybe this is me coming to watches from a number of other fields. So, for example, I've been involved in cars in the past. If you walk down into your Porsche dealer right now and pick up that lovely new Porsche Macan, I think it said, no one in that dealership is going to tell you that under the skin it's essentially an Audi Q5. Nowhere in any of the paperwork will it tell you that it is essentially an Audi Q5. Go into an Arbath dealer and talk to the salespeople about your Arbath. At no point is he going to say 80% of the structure is actually a Mazda MX-5. Go across to another field I'm in, cameras and photography. You can scour the Canon website for as much as you want. You will not find reference to the fact that 90% of anything that's not a DLSR will have a Sony chip as the sensor. Go to the Nikon site and they will do everything within their power to hide the fact that 80% of their cameras come with Sony sensors. It's just hidden. You're not told that. So I suppose the thing is, I'm used to this. This is kind of how everywhere else I've ever kind of collected and played in a hobby works. And the idea that somehow in watches we expect it to be different doesn't really resonate with me. Again, this kind of is a carryover from cars and cameras where I'm used to. This idea that says most people don't care. Most people don't care. They won't ask where the movement comes from. They won't ask where the chip comes from. They won't ask where the chassis design came from. They don't care. And so you tell them that it's a Porsche, or you tell them that it's a Nikon, or you tell them that it's an Alpina movement. They didn't care. They didn't really mind either way. They just wanted that watch, that car, that camera. Where the parts came from, they couldn't care less. The only people who do care really care, and they care so much that they're on the net checking. They're the guys, they're the people like us who walk into ADs and know more about the product that we're being sold than the person selling it to us. Most of us are in that position. We walk into an AD having Googled that watch, knowing where all its parts come from, knowing the history of that, knowing that this part was purchased from here and not from here. You know what? The guy selling it to you doesn't know that. 99.9% of the rest of the world doesn't know that, nor do they care. And so I think this is us making a huge mountain out of a molehill that only we even know exists. And to asking the rest of the world to change to meet what is our little prejudice today. And you know what? I don't care. I don't think it's a big issue. I think if you really do care about this, go for your life. Go check it out on Watchbase. Come up with your own little data, because nothing's hidden, by the way. It's all in websites like Watchbase. Go there, check out the watches you like, find where the movements come from, buy the watch or don't. It's not hidden. It's easy to find, and you can keep shouting at the storm and shaking your fist and being like King Canute and telling the tide to go out, and saying that the industry has to change. The industry has to change the way they talk about movements to suit like the 0.5% of us in the world, 0.5% of you, because I don't. The 0.5% of watch buyers in the world who may give a damn. But I'll tell you, you're going to be shaking your fist for a long time. You're going to be yelling at the sky for a long time, and nothing's going to change. Breitlings and the Frederick Constants and the Alpinas aren't doing anything wrong. They shouldn't change. They shouldn't feel they have to change. And I don't think they're going to change. So that's it. That's why I don't care about this whole idea of changing part numbers. If you do, all power to you. If you want to think that my rationalizations are because it kind of suits me to be so, like I said, I can't step outside of myself, so I can't ditch every one of those feelings. So it's possible. I will concede it is possible I'm biased, but I don't think so. Anyway, have a go at me in the comments if you think I am. If you think that it is absolutely vital that that an ETA or a Solida movement that was used as a base that became something else is identified on a watch somehow, A, I really want to know why. B, I'm really curious to know who that is for, and why it's important that they say it and that you don't just find it out from another source. And I'm really interested to know, do you think it's ever going to change? Do you think anyone is going to care enough about the small group of people who care about this very intensely to change anything? I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches. If you wait for a little while, a card's going to come up, and it's got my contact details, both my email address and my Instagram handle. Feel free to contact me. I love getting feedback from my viewers. Please subscribe. Slowly but surely, I am chipping away at my first goal of 1,000 subs. So yeah, apart from that, please comment below. I am really curious to know what people think about this topic. Bye.